It's crazy that the 2024 NBA draft class is old news. I remember yesterday when we were debating the whole top 5, who could go number 1 in this draft, and now we're into year 2 of all these players selected a couple of Junes ago. And right now, this draft class is all over the place in year number 2. There's some really good, there's some really bad, and I wanted to talk about this draft class today. And no better place to start out at the top. Zachary Sachet was the number 1 overall pick to the Atlanta Hawks out of Jailberg in France. He was in consensus number 1 overall pick throughout the year. You had a little bit of Alex Sarr, you had a little bit of Stefan Castle. Hey, you had a little bit of Cody Williams at some points throughout the 2024 collegiate season. Sachet ends up going number 1. When Landry Fields and Kyle Korver were the head decision makers at the time, they went to his playoff game in person, and that was enough. Sachet had a very strong rookie season. He ended up finishing runner-up to Stefan Castle in the Rookie of the Year voting. He ends up on All-Rookie First Team. Was really just the definition of a 3-and-D wing for the Atlanta Hawks. Wasn't asked to do too much with the ball in his hands, but was a great spot-up shooter. And he's pretty much replicating what he did last year into this year. Now, he recently had a scary fall against the Phoenix Suns, and he got off to a little bit of a slower start, but since the Hawks have been winning a ton of games as of late, a big reason why is because of Zachary Sachet, who is now up to 47% shooting on the field, averaging around 13 points, 2.5 rebounds, and is shooting 34.5% from 3. I would still like to see a little bit more strides from Sachet this year. Now, the mid-range does look better. The rim percentage looks a little bit better as well. He's just not hitting as many long twos. He's pretty much identical to what he was last year as a three-point shooter from corner threes and above the break threes. And I still think he's a versatile defender because he is so lanky, so he can guard multiple positions on the perimeter. He still needs to get a little bit stronger if he's going to be a physical force down low, given that he's 6'8" with a really nice wingspan for the modern NBA. So we'll see where Sachet's development goes. He's 20 years old. I don't know how you'd feel if he just replicated what he did last year this year. I think you'd like to see the 12.5 points go to 14 points. You'd like to see the 3-point percentage get closer to 40% a night. He has been better around the rim, which is encouraging, and you want to see the finishing take a next step. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Sachet looks throughout the course of year number 2, because I'm not sure many people would have him go number 1 in a redraft, but you can let me know what you think down below. And my number 1 prospect for the 2024 draft is having such an encouraging year number 2 so far, Alex Sarr of the Washington Wizards. I'll be honest, Alex Sarr did not have too much of an encouraging rookie season. Now, he was in a bad environment. It was a losing environment. Not a lot of good just defense in general going on in Washington. And he's probably their best defender last year, but he could not hit a shot around the rim. He was shooting 30% on threes on 5 attempts a night. Not the percentage you want for the volume he was taking. And now this year, the shot quality, the shot diet is so much better. He's taking around 3 threes a night, which I like out of my 7-foot center that is still just 20 years old. He's up to 18 points on the year, 8 rebounds, and 3.5 assists. He's shooting 51% from the field. He shot 45% on twos last year. That is up to 56% this year. You absolutely love to see that. The usage is up. The assist percentage is up. The rim percentage is up. Last year, he shot 63% at the rim, which was just in the 23rd percentile of NBA players. That is awful for somebody that is 7 foot tall. This year, 74% at the rim. You love to see it. He's operating very nicely out of the short roll. He's had a nice connection with CJ McCollum and Trey Johnson so far in that backcourt, as well as moving with Keshan George in transition. Bub and Keshan, guys, we're going to get to later on in this video. Alex Sarr, maybe he's looking like the best player from this draft class. I never stayed away from that. I knew when I was watching him at Perth, especially when he got drafted into a rebuilding environment in Washington, it was going to take some time for Alex Sarr to be a good player in this league. Maybe we're ahead of schedule at that point, just 13 games into year number 2, because he's looking like he could go number 1 in a redraft. If you remember, that was in debate for him to go number 1 to the Hawks. I thought they should have taken him. He didn't want to go to Atlanta. He wanted to have more opportunities in Washington, and that's just going to work out for DC in the long term, in my opinion. I think I'd still rather have Sarr than Sachet today. And if Alex Sarr keeps this up, he's going to be a really good player one day. He could be an all-star level talent, and he could definitely be the cornerstone piece of the Washington Wizards going forward. I would just like to see the Wizards be a little bit more competitive, since they're basically the worst team in the league again this year. Now, here's a very topical number 3 overall pick, Sheppard, who definitely had a forgettable rookie season. He wasn't really consistently in the rotation last year for the Houston Rockets, given that they were exceeding expectations and had a deeper roster in general. And Reed was going to have a higher workload this year before the Fred VanVleet injury, and that skyrocketed after Fred VanVleet tore his ACL. He's pretty much doubled his minutes this year. He's shooting 49% from the field after shooting 35% from the field last year. He's shooting about 48% on threes on about 6 attempts a night. Exactly what you wanted to see out of Reed Sheppard coming out of Kentucky, averaging around 12 points, 3 assists, and 3 rebounds, and has turned into a really nice rotational piece for the Houston Rockets. I was questioning the Houston Rockets' three-point shooting as a team going into the year. They're one of the best in that department this year. Big part is because of Reed Sheppard, who's in the 100th percentile of NBA three-point shooters this year, shooting about 49%, shooting about 50% on above the break threes, 46% on corner threes. His rim percentage has stayed strong with his usage going up. The mid-range jumper has been great this year. He's creating his own shots. He's creating separation. What we saw at Kentucky is what we're seeing currently with the Houston Rockets. Maybe that's just helping that Alperen Sengun and Kevin Durant demand so much of the opposing team's defense on the floor. It's allowing for Reed Sheppard to get open looks. Either way, he may not be as good of a defender, or maybe he's just an on-ball creator, or somebody that went 3rd overall, but this man is taking strides in year number 2. He's going to be a really good rotational player in this league, and I think a really good starter when it's all said and done. I loved Reed Sheppard going into this class. He was my number 3rd prospect, and now he's looking like a number 3 prospect this year. And here's who you can make an argument for the best player in this class since the draft happened: Stefan Castle, who went number 4 to the San Antonio Spurs. If you remember, leading up to the draft, he wanted to go somewhere where he was going to be a starting point guard, so he didn't really want to go to Charlotte. He didn't want to go to Atlanta. He didn't want to go to Houston, really, where they had Fred VanVleet in that backcourt. So he ends up going to San Antonio at 4, and he's lived up to the hype since he's been drafted. He won the Rookie of the Year from this class last year. He had a very high workload with a ton of injuries in San Antonio for a team that didn't even make the play-in tournament. This year, he's taken a step in year number 2. He's shooting around 62% on twos, 50% from the field. He is struggling with his three-point shot, though, just 24% on threes. He wasn't a great three-point shooter at UConn. He wasn't a good three-point shooter last year. So it is definitely something to keep an eye on going forward if Castle is ever going to be a good three-point shooter in this league, given that he shares a backcourt with De'Aaron Fox, who's a little bit inconsistent as a three-point shooter as well. But Castle is averaging around 7.5 assists this year, 6 rebounds, 4 turnovers, 3.5 fouls a night, and is just shooting 69% from the free throw line. So you're going to get your good. You're going to get somebody that is a great downhill attacker, a great transition player, a very positive defender, and can finish at the rim, but somebody that could be a little bit overzealous as a defender, who could turn the ball over as a ball handler, and somebody that is not going to hit his threes and is not going to hit his free throws at an above average rate. So it pretty much comes down to what you value at the NBA level. Do you value somebody like a 6'6" combo guard like Stefan Castle that could finish at the rim and that could be a positive defender and a solid playmaker out of the pick and roll? Or do you value somebody like Alex Sarr, who's turning into a good three-point shooter that's a solid rim protector? I think those two guys are in debate to go number 1 in a redraft right now. You can let me know if you agree or disagree with me down below. I'd love to know who you guys would have going number 1 in a redraft. I think this was a little bit of a surprising pick when it happened. Ron Holland going to the Detroit Pistons at number 5. I loved Ron Holland. He was my 2nd ranked prospect. So far this year, though, man, the Pistons have been one of the more exciting teams in the league. They're at the top of the Eastern Conference, but Ron Holland is not taking the strides in year number 2, especially with the increase in shots because of all the injuries in Detroit. Cade Cunningham is banged up. Jaden Ivey is banged up as well. So I thought this was going to be a great opportunity for Ron Holland to really showcase what he could be with a higher workload, given that he shot 47% from the field last year, 61% on twos, was a phenomenal transition player and a great energizer off the bench defensively. This year, you're still getting the energy as a defensive player that can guard out of the post, that can guard in transition and get a chase down block, but he's shooting just 29% on threes. It was a big question mark in the G League Ignite. It's not been great this year. Last year, he shot 60% on twos. That is now down to 45% this year. And like I said, he's getting more volume with all these injuries in Detroit. I think Holland is going to be fine. So far this year, he's shooting just 59% around the rim, which should be his bread and butter, given that, in my opinion, was the most athletic player in the 2024 draft class. So we're going to have to keep an eye on Ron Holland. It's been a disappointing year number 2. He's fouling a lot more. He's turning the ball over a lot more, and he's shooting the ball a little bit worse this year with the increase in opportunities. Not what you want to see for somebody going into year number 2. And then here was a big head scratcher on the night of the 2024 draft. The Charlotte Hornets selecting Tidjane Salaün out of Cholet. And this has been almost a disaster so far. Currently, Tidjane Salaün is playing in the G League. And it felt like last year, he was still somebody that was basically in high school coming over to the NBA level. So this year, it was going to feel like his real rookie season. He showed flashes in the Pan last year for a bad Hornets team. And he showed flashes in the Summer League as well with the Hornets. This year, though, he only appeared in 7 games, was averaging around 12 minutes a night, shooting 36% from the field, 33% on threes, 66% from the free throw line. Really wasn't doing much as an offensive creator. It's kind of just been a stand in the corner, catch and shoot guy, and sometimes he looks lost defensively. He still looks like he could be physically gifted in this league, like 6'9", over 200 pounds, and he's still just 20 years old, but he's extremely raw as a prospect. And with all the Hornets injuries so far, with like Grant Williams on the shelf, Brandon Miller already hurt, LaMelo Ball recently missed some time. If Tidjane Salaün cannot find any playing time with these injuries, I'm not sure if there's going to be playing time for him over the course of the year. Maybe after the trade deadline, he'll get consistent playing time. And he was intriguing, right, when they just drafted him in 2024, but now as they drafted Con Knipple, Kalkbrenner, Sion James, McNeely, they're probably going to have a lottery pick again in 2026. We're just going to bump Tidjane down and down their developmental hierarchy pecking order, and I'm a little bit worried about his priority for the Hornets' future going forward. Could he just be used as a trade asset? And he's even going to get his fourth-year team option picked up at this point. So he's somebody to definitely keep an eye on this year. I loved kind of all the moves that this new regime have made post Michael Jordan and Mitch Kupchak, right? With new ownership, Charles Lee at the helm, and then you have Jeff Peterson making the decisions in the front office. I just think they should have taken the guy that went one pick after, because they could have used another big man. And that player is Donovan Clingan of the Portland Trail Blazers. I think could be a really good rim protector in this league for a long, long time. He showed great flashes as a rookie last year, appeared in about 67 games, was fighting with Robert Williams and DeAndre Ayton for some playing time at the center spot, but started a ton of games after the All-Star break when the Blazers were playing some of their best basketball. This year, he's been healthy, which is good because there's been always some injury concerns with Donovan Clingan in the past. He's averaging around 9 points, 9 rebounds, about a block and a half a night, shooting 48% from the field. He's taking a ton of threes, and they're not really falling. He's taking 3 threes a night, and he's shooting 20% on threes. That volume is definitely going to have to come down if that efficiency isn't going to get better, but I do like the willingness to shoot right now for Donovan Clingan. He's a solid free throw shooter for a big man as well, and I do think he's going to be their rim protector for the foreseeable future. When they selected Hansen Yang in the first round in the 2025 draft, I was a little confused, but I just never thought Yang was going to be better than Clingan, at least during their 4-year contracts in Portland. Clingan is the guy there, and he was somebody that just elevated his draft stock throughout that 2024 March Madness tournament when he won back-to-back titles with the UConn Huskies. The Blazers hit it out of the park with this one. He's maybe not going to be an all-star, all-NBA caliber center one day, but I just think he's going to be a good center in this league for a long, long time. And this pick is also an interesting one to look back on. Rob Dillingham, who was the 8th overall pick to the Minnesota Timberwolves. This was supposed to be the San Antonio Spurs pick. They got this from the Jakob Poeltl trade from the Raptors, but on the night of the 2024 draft, the Minnesota Timberwolves essentially traded a 2030 unprotected pick swap and an unprotected 2031 first-round pick for Rob Dillingham, who's barely even cracked this rotation for Minnesota last year. He appeared in 49 games. A lot of that was garbage time. Didn't really play for them in the playoffs whatsoever during their conference championship run. This year, Dillingham has played more, but he's had a face injury, and he's shooting just 39% from the field, 23% from 3, 72% from the free throw line, averaging 5 points and 2 assists. Now, Dillingham is still 20 years old, but he is noticeably small out there, and that was going to be a big con during his draft evaluation, given that he's just a smaller guard at the NBA level. He was a good shooter at Kentucky. He ended up finishing that 2024 season shooting around 44% on threes. He shot 47% from the field, but did struggle a little bit at the rim, and we're seeing that on display here at the NBA level. And Minnesota doesn't really have too much time to keep developing Rob Dillingham. They want to win right now with an aging Gobert, Julius Randle just turning 30 years old, and Anthony Edwards maybe in the prime of his career. And this team already didn't have that much future draft capital from the Rudy Gobert trade, so they ended up trading another first-round pick later on. Who knows where they're going to be in 2031 for a player that is really struggling to crack the rotation right now. I'm not sure if they would trade Dillingham at one point this year, but I'm a little bit worried he may not turn into a good NBA player, at least not in Minnesota. Zach Edey ended up going number 9 to the Memphis Grizzlies, and hand up, I thought this one was a little bit perplexing on the night of the draft. I liked Ware a little bit more. I liked Yves Missi a little bit more, just as long-term players in this league, and that could still be true, but Edey so far has been like a non-box score darling for the Memphis Grizzlies. You don't realize how good they are, or I guess you should say you don't realize how bad they are when Zach Edey is off the floor with his screen setting, his enforcer mentality on the defensive end of the floor. He's just a great rim protector and a solid rebounder for this team, and we just seen that on display for Memphis after their poor start this year with no Zach Edey. We saw that when he missed about 16 games last year for the Grizz and how much better they were with him in the starting lineup. Edey just recently came back from an injury, which is something we're always going to have to monitor in his NBA career, given that he is 7'4". But he was one of the more dominant players this century and honestly in college basketball history during his 4 years at Purdue. With such a volatile draft, the Memphis Grizzlies took pretty much a safe prospect in Zach Edey here. They didn't want to take too much of a risk. And given who went one pick later, I think they made the right decision. Because at number 10, he might be worse than Tidjane Salaün as a lottery pick so far. Cody Williams to the Utah Jazz. Yes, the younger brother of Jalen Williams ended up going in the top 10 after 1 year at Colorado. Now, Cody Williams was not a good shooter whatsoever in high school, but he shot 41% on threes on about 41 attempts during his 2024 season with the Buffaloes, and that was encouraging enough to the Jazz front office that maybe he fixed the shot, even though it really wasn't on noticeable volume, and he was somebody that really didn't like the ball in the clutch. He was not super aggressive down the stretch, and I think he definitely needed to stay another year in college. He is way too raw as a player right now. The Jazz had the lowest win total projection since the trust the process Sixers this year, and Cody Williams is not even cracking this rotation. He's only appeared in about 8 games and looks lost out there at times on the offensive end, on the defensive end. When he's been out there, 36% from the field, 18% from three. He doesn't get to the free throw line either. And like I said, has not been a great defender. Now he's still just 20 years old. I hope Utah continues to develop him and maybe he's going to have more opportunities going forward. But as they draft guys, like I said with Salaün, he's going to go down their priority pecking order, right? Like Ace Bailey is a more important piece for this team long-term. Definitely Keontae George. Definitely Bryce Sensabaugh, at least at the moment. And then you have Kyle Filipowski, Taylor Hendricks, Walter Clayton, Isaiah Collier, Walker Kessler. All these guys I think are more important to Utah and their long-term outlook. I have no idea how this is going to look for Cody Williams in the long term because he may not ever start. Lauri Markkanen is averaging 30 points a game this year. And if he doesn't get traded, where is Cody Williams ever going to start games for the Utah Jazz? Where is he ever going to find playing time if it's just basically Ace Bailey and Lauri Markkanen getting majority of those forward minutes at the moment? I'm a little bit worried about Cody Williams. Cody Williams, Rob Dillingham, and Tidjane Salaün definitely look like misses at the moment. And it makes it look a little bit worse when given who went one pick after Cody Williams in a similar archetype, Matas Buzelis, this lanky, rangy stretch 4, but could also be a 3 hybrid, who's just been a great player so far for the Chicago Bulls. And when I talked about Stefan Castle and Alex Sarr, who could go number 1 in a redraft, Matas Buzelis is right there as well. Somebody that was so much better in the second half of the season last year after they traded away Zach LaVine. They had this run and gun style offense and he fit in seamlessly to that. This year, after a strong summer league and preseason, he's averaging 15 points, almost doubling what he was averaging last year, 5.5 rebounds, 47% from the field, 40% from 3, and 85% from the free throw line. I like the defensive intensity as well for somebody that is just 21 years old, who's 6'10". He could not create a lick of separation if you watched him at the G League Ignite, and that has changed drastically during his time with the Chicago Bulls. I want to credit their front office. I want to credit Billy Donovan for really getting the most out of Matas Buzelis right now, because last year and this year is a completely different player than what he was with the dysfunctional G League Ignite. In hindsight, it looks like he should have went in the top 5. Chicago hit on this draft pick, and that's a big reason why they've been an exciting team to watch this year. And then at number 12, the OKC Thunder selected Nikola Topic out of Megabasket in Serbia, who's maybe had the most unfortunate injury luck out of anybody in this class so far. So he suffers a torn ACL during the playoffs for Megabasket, like late in their year going into the 2024 draft. I thought was going to be a top 10 pick. So he falls to the Thunder at 12. They win a title without him. He looks intriguing in the summer league and preseason as well. And then unfortunately is now dealing with testicular cancer. Just an absolute brutal situation for Topic, who's just 20 years old. You really feel for the guy. And I hope he can play maybe this year, but if not next year, because I really want to see him at the NBA level and hopefully he's okay down the line. I love Devin Carter in the pre-draft process. I thought he went right around where he should to a team that's hoping to make the playoffs going forward. He goes to the Sacramento Kings, and then unfortunately going into his rookie season, he suffers a major shoulder injury, so he doesn't have a training camp, a summer league, preseason, nothing like that. He gets thrown into a complete dumpster fire in the winter of 2025 with the Kings, who just traded away their star player in De'Aaron Fox. They fired Mike Brown. They eventually fired Monte McNair, their GM. And they're like, all right, just try to do something here with this dysfunctional environment. He just shoots 37% from the field, 4 points, after having a major shoulder injury. One of the worst injuries to have for an NBA player. And this year, I was so excited about Devin Carter, who had a strong summer league, a strong preseason. And then they ended up signing Russell Westbrook. Then they ended up signing Dennis Schroeder. And I'm like, where are the minutes going to be here for Devin Carter? And they're just not happening this year. Devin Carter has really struggled to crack this rotation. I don't know if that's a Doug Christie issue. I don't know if that's a Devin Carter issue in practice whatsoever. But the Kings are one of the more disappointing teams this year. They're currently 3-11 at the moment I'm recording this. Now, Devin Carter did play over 20 minutes a couple games ago against the Atlanta Hawks, but they lost by 33 in that one. That's why he did not play at all against the Minnesota Timberwolves. He's currently dealing with an illness right now, and I'm not even sure the 23-year-old is going to consistently crack the rotation this year. Maybe the Kings do some type of a fire sale at the deadline, and they play their lottery pick from the 2024 draft. Because if you remember, this pick was essentially top 13 protected. It goes to the Sacramento Kings, but that meant that they were going to lose their 2025 first rounder, which ended up being the pick to Derek Queen. And the Atlanta Hawks now have the Pelicans unprotected first round pick. So maybe in an alternate universe, Devin Carter is a Hawk and the Kings are in sole possession of that Pelicans first round pick in the future. This one has also been a miss so far. I just want to see Devin Carter on a good team. I think he's a good buy low candidate at the deadline if possible. And then Bub Carrington, unfortunately, has taken somewhat of a step back a little bit here in year number 2. He was a really exciting rookie, and I think Bub is going to have a little bit more pressure on him, given that he was kind of the main asset coming back in the Denny of Dia trade, who was looking like an all-star this year with the Portland Trailblazers. Now, Bub last year played all 82 games, dealing with some off-the-court stuff, and it was really impressive that he gave 100% effort every single night. This year, though, he is struggling, hitting a little bit of a sophomore slump. He's averaging about 3 less points per game. He's shooting around 32% from the field. He's been a better three-point shooter on less volume, but he is really struggling with his mid-range jumper and his finishing around the rim. He doesn't really get to the free throw line whatsoever. He's a solid passer, but there's just kind of a lot of mouths to feed with the young talent in Washington right now. It's been a little bit of a step backwards for Bub Carrington. He's had some good shooting games as of late. I'm hoping he picks up some momentum going forward because he really looked like a promising young piece for Washington last year. I thought one of the more perplexing picks on the night of the 2024 draft was Ware to the Miami Heat. They already had Bam Adebayo. Ware had some motor issues coming out of Oregon in 2023 and Indiana in 2024. So I thought it was a weird dynamic with him and Coach Spo, and maybe it's still been like that today, but Ware has been a home run pick for where he went at pick number 15, averaging around 11 points this year, 9.5 rebounds, a block and a half a night. He's shooting 38% on threes, 54% from the field, and him being a good three-point shooter at the NBA level has really given Miami some versatility with him and some flexibility in the front court. You could play him at the 5 with Bam on the bench, or right now he's currently injured, or you could play him out there with Bam Adebayo at the 4, or Bam could be the 4 and Ware could be the 5. He's 7 foot tall. He's a solid rim protector, had a nice game-saving block against the Knicks the other night. So I think Miami did a great job with this pick here at number 15. Now, Jared McCain ends up going to the Philadelphia 76ers at 16, and there was an argument that he was going to be Rookie of the Year last year. If there wasn't a 65-game minimum or having that in the NBA now, he could have been in that conversation after only playing 23 games last year. He was somebody that was probably a top 5 pick in a redraft. This year, though, he's played 4 games since returning from a massive injury last year, and Nick Nurse is just not really playing him right now. I don't know if it's them just easing back up Jared McCain or him not looking at full strength. He played 15 games in his first game back, didn't play the next 2, and then played 8 minutes, 6 minutes, and just 5 minutes in their win against the LA Clippers. He's barely taken any shots this year because he's barely played for the Philadelphia 76ers. Justin Edwards, Trendon Watford, some of those guys, even Dominic Barlow, coming off the bench earlier than Jared McCain, which really doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, maybe they're just easing Jared McCain back into the swing of things because, yeah, he suffered a concussion last year. He suffered this gruesome knee injury that he was out for the year. And then he suffered a thumb injury before the year starts. So McCain has had some really unfortunate injury luck so far to start off his career. And they just recently got Paul George back. They're relatively healthy right now, and they just drafted Edgecombe, a guard, number 3 overall. Quentin Grimes is getting more shots and will continue to get more shots than McCain throughout the course of the year. Something to keep an eye on. Now, Dalton Connect looked good out of the gate, right? He was 23 years old. He was a polished college player, and now he probably doesn't look like he would go in the lottery in a redraft. I think if the Lakers tried trading him, probably wouldn't go for a first-round pick, probably wouldn't headline a Mark Williams trade. He's been a little bit worse here in year number 2, but honestly, Connect has given them some solid playing time as late. He's been shooting the ball nicely with all their injuries at the moment, and he's been asked to play 35 minutes a night against the Milwaukee Bucks the other night, knocked down a 3, shot 50% from the field. He is far from a starter in this league. There are some clear limitations to him defensively and as an on-ball creator at the NBA level, but I still think he could be a good three-point shooter in the NBA. I don't think this is the worst pick, right? I've talked about Tidjane Salaün, Cody Williams, Devin Carter, that are far worse picks than Dalton Connect, who went 17th overall. I wonder if the Lakers would have liked to have this one back, because the player that went after him looks a little bit better. Because Tristan da Silva has been one of the more exciting sophomores so far for the Orlando Magic, who's shooting 48% from the field, 40% from three, on 5 attempts a night. That's what I love to see out of Tristan da Silva. He's a solid free throw shooter. He can rebound, pass a little bit, defend. He's basically a jack of all trades, master of none. That's what I talked about with him going into the pre-draft process in 2024. He wasn't a perfect player by any means, but he could do a little bit of everything at a role player level, and he's showcasing that right now for the Orlando Magic. A really good start to year number 2. Jacoby Walter, who ended up going number 19 to the Toronto Raptors, was always somebody that we were going to have to wait and see at the NBA level. He showed real flashes for the Raptors in the second half last year, but now that this team is deeper and healthier than they were last year, he is struggling with his limited playing time, pretty much getting his minutes cut in half, shooting 32% from the field, 27% from three. And when these young guards have inconsistent playing time, it's really tough to find their shooting motions and their rhythm on an NBA floor. We saw that last year with Reed Sheppard. Inconsistent playing time, he would have a quick leash from Ime Udoka, and if Jacoby Walter is not knocking down his shots, the Raptors, who have been good this year, are not going to have a reason to try to play him right now. Jalen Tyson ended up going 1 pick after Jacoby Walter, and he's looked like a better player so far. Definitely more NBA ready, given that he played at 3 different schools, Texas, Texas Tech, and his final year at Cal. He's a big physical wing who is shooting 46% on threes this year on about 5 attempts a night. Max Strus was a noticeable loss with an injury going into the year, and Tyson has stepped up. He's actually started a decent amount of games for the Cavs, averaging around 11 points, 4 rebounds, and like I said, shooting 46% on threes, 62% effective field goal percentage, and about 49% overall. He can still get a little bit foul hoppy out there. He's still a new player in this league, 22 years old. But this has been a great pick by Kobe Altman later in the first round. Yves Missi looked like a solid athletic center last year for the New Orleans Pelicans when this team just had all different types of injuries in the 2025 season. Now his playing time was obviously going to be a little bit less this year. They drafted Derek Queen, they signed Kevon Mooney, Zion Williamson was back, and he's playing about 20 minutes a night this year. He started some games. They picked up DeAndre Jordan, who started over him at one point. He's still a really good athletic center. I don't know if he's going to be a really good rim protector like a Donovan Clingan or a Zach Edey for a long time in this league, but I do think if he was just in a competent organization or a team that just had any sense of just continuity and just healthy players out there for consistent time, then I think he would just look a little bit better. But it's just like a different rotation, a different lineup every single night. And oh yeah, his head coach just got fired in year number 2. The Denver Nuggets traded up to select Deron Holmes in the first round of the 2024 draft. Now, he was going to play a lot more last year, in my opinion, than this year, but unfortunately he suffered that Achilles tear in the summer league. And the Nuggets basically had to throw Zeke Naji or Dario Saric as backup big men last year, a little bit of DeAndre Jordan. But Jonas Valanciunas is the clear-cut better backup center option for this team. So unless there's an injury to Jokic or Jonas Valanciunas, I don't think we're going to see too much Deron Holmes this year, which is a little disappointing given how good he looked in the summer league this year. He looked healthy again. He was knocking down his threes. So yeah, like I said, I don't think we're going to really see him unless an injury happens, or maybe David Adelman will like to just give him some type of shot at one point this year, maybe some garbage time minutes. AJ Johnson is one of 2 players to get traded in this first round so far. He was in that Chris Middleton, Kyle Kuzma trade last year. He's also struggling to find playing time with the Washington Wizards right now, who have CJ McCollum, Trey Johnson, Bub Carrington, a guy we're going to get to in a second, all in that backcourt right now. You have Bilal Coulibaly, Cam Whitmore, Chris Middleton on the perimeter. So it's really tough for AJ Johnson to find consistent playing time. He's really just played garbage time this year for the Washington Wizards. Still a raw player at the moment. I think would benefit a little bit playing in the G League, because the Washington Wizards selected somebody 1 pick after AJ Johnson, and that was Keshan George out of Miami. This pick actually originally was to the New York Knicks, and they traded down. They could have had Keshan George, but they took somebody a pick later who's far worse at the moment that we'll get to in a second. But Keshan George has been one of the best rookies in year number 2. Now he is fouling a ton this year. He's turning the ball over a lot, but these are the growing pains I like to see from the young wing in Washington. He's averaging 17 points per game, 50% from the field, 45% from 3, 6 rebounds, and 4.5 assists a night. Hell yeah, that's what I want to see from Keshan George in year number 2. Honestly, when I was watching him at Miami, I thought this was a raw player. It was going to take some time. He was a developmental project, but I saw 3-and-D upside. I'm seeing way more shot creation, playmaking ability than I thought we were going to see at the University of Miami. So I've been thrilled by Keshan George in year number 2. And the player the Knicks traded down for, Pacome Dadier, who came over from France, just an incredibly raw prospect who is far from being an NBA rotational player at the moment. Mike Brown has had a deeper rotation this year. We haven't really seen Pacomi Daddier. And there's an injury to OG, but unless there's an injury to Mikal Bridges, which with his track record, probably not going to happen, Josh Hart and some others, maybe we'd see Daddier this year, but I think there's a more likelihood that he ends up getting traded at the deadline. This is maybe a blemish on Sam Presti's incredible resume. He traded 5 second-rounders to trade up for Dylan Jones out of Weber State, and he ended up getting traded to the Washington Wizards after year number 1, not really playing for the Thunder when they won it all last year. He got traded for basically with a 2029 second-rounder for Colby Jones for OKC to save some money in the offseason. Then he got waived from Washington. He's currently balling out for the Blazers G League squad. I would not be surprised if we see him at one point this year, probably as like a March call-up when all these injuries happens to some teams. A lot of people were high on the 27th overall pick in year number 2, Terrence Shannon Jr., the Minnesota Timberwolves, who's been kind of a disappointment this year. When Nickeil Alexander-Walker signed with the Hawks, people thought that Terrence Shannon Jr. was the next man up, and he has struggled with his playing time. He cannot finish around the rim. He's not been great in transition. He's currently dealing with a foot injury. I don't love his defense at the moment, and he's already 25 years old. He's shooting 36% on threes. Like, it's somewhat encouraging, but it's on a 3.5 a night. Another guy that I think could be potentially moved at the deadline, we'll see. The Suns traded down on the night of the 2024 draft and selected Ryan Dunn. I wish my Knicks just took him where they originally selected instead of Daddier, because Ryan Dunn, like, I know he's not a great three-point shooter. He's shooting about 31% in his career from 3, which is actually pretty good for what I expected for him going into the NBA out of Virginia. He's just a monster athlete, a monster defender, a really good rebounder for somebody that's kind of like a small forward, power forward hybrid, and could just finish around the rim. He's shooting essentially 60% on 2s. If he knows his limitations, he's going to be a good player in this league. He's exactly what Phoenix needed, somebody that will rebound, guard out of the post, guard on the perimeter. I just raved about his defense all throughout the 2024 draft cycle. I just wish my Knicks listened to me a little bit, but a really nice pick by Phoenix, essentially getting a second rounder by trading down for him. I had a top 15 grade on Isaiah Collier. He ends up going 29 to the Utah Jazz. This is a home run pick by them. I think just NBA front offices overthought this one. If you watch my draft stream, if you watch any of my draft content, you knew that I thought that Isaiah Collier went way too low. He just recently came back from an injury this year, and he's looked really good as a creator. He's averaging 7.5 assists so far throughout 5 games. He's finishing a lot better at the rim. He's not going to be a great three-point shooter in this league, and I think that can limit him as a starting point guard in the NBA, but he's going to be a good rotational point guard in this league for a long, long time. He should have went 10 spots, maybe 15, maybe 20 spots earlier, and the Jazz got him at 29, who's been miles better than their 10th overall pick. And then at number 30, the Boston Celtics selected Baylor Scheierman, who hasn't really played a ton for Boston this year. It's been kind of inconsistent. Like, one night he could play 4 minutes against the Wizards, another night it could be 18 minutes against the Clippers, and his main calling card coming out of Creighton was his three-point shot. It's been a little bit inconsistent this year. He's not been, I think, as willing as a shooter under Missoula's offense, and he's already 25 years old. Similar thing with like a Terrence Shannon Jr. Like, you're already 25. I don't think you're going to get that much better than what you currently are right now. I don't think Boston would make the same pick if they had a redo on this. So that's for me talking about every first round pick. I'm going to quickly go through some of the hits on the second round. Kyle Filipowski won Summer League MVP, and he was a really good shooter last year for the Utah Jazz. Now, he hasn't been as good of a shooter this year in Utah, just shooting 31% on threes. But for somebody that ended up going pick 32, really good value. And then I got to talk about who went 38th. AJ Mitchell, who could win 6th man of the year. He could win most improved player this year for the OKC Thunder, a team that just had one of the best net ratings this century last year, that won the NBA Finals, and he's averaging 16 points per game for that team this year. Yeah, that's because of Jalen Williams' injury. Some other guys have been banged up at times, like Caruso, Casey Wallace, Dort, and AJ Mitchell isn't really a great three-point shooter, but this guy can get downhill, finish at the rim, get to the free throw line, taking about 3.5 free throws a night, which is great for a 6'5" combo guard who went 38th overall out of UC Santa Barbara. Sam Presti, man, you did it again. Jalen Wells was one of the better rookies last year as well, no pun intended, but this year he's been off to a slower start. He's not really knocking down his threes. I mean, Memphis has a lot of rotational issues at the moment. They've had some notable injuries. Ja Morant just got hurt. All of Jalen Wells' numbers are down in year number 2. And then I think you can get some love to other guys. Adem Bona has shown some good energizing minutes for the Philadelphia 76ers. Jamal Shed looks like a really good point of attack defender. Pele Larson has started some games this year for the Miami Heat. A really nice pick out of Arizona. Quidden Post has been a good floor spacing big man for the Golden State Warriors out of Boston College. Cam Spencer got a nice rookie extension from the Memphis Grizzlies and is going to play a little bit more with the Ja Morant injury. And Bronny James has even started some games this year for the LA Lakers with all their injuries they're having at the moment. And that is going to be for me. I hope you guys did enjoy. Let me know, do you think this draft class has gotten worse? Do you think it's gotten better? Do you think it's off to a disappointing year 2? Or do you think it's exceeding your expectations? Let me know down below. Drop a thumbs up if you guys did enjoy. And maybe you want to see me do something like this with the 2023 draft. Let me know. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.